If you're a real estate agent here in Texas and you want to make sure that you do get paid at closing, you're going to need to know all about this form that I'm getting ready to explain for you. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm a realtor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth marketplace, and this channel is just dedicated to educating other real estate agents on not just contract documents, but everything about running a real estate business. So while you're here, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notification when I post more content. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and go over one of the newest contract forms that we have to use. This is called the Addendum Regarding Brokers Fees. And we're going to put it up on the screen here so that you can follow along at points and see exactly what I'm talking about here. Now, this form is the TXR 2406, and you need to use it so that your compensation is addressed and it's part of the contract. So let's start at the top here. It is the Addendum Regarding Brokers Fees. The first thing that you're going to put on here is your property address. There's a spot for that, so throw that on there. There's a note right away. It says this addendum should not be used with the farm and ranch contract, Trek 2515 or TXR 1701. And the reason why you don't want to use this or you can't use this with those documents is because buyer agent commission is addressed on those documents. So you wouldn't want to use this. It'd be redundant. You don't need to. So let's dig right into paragraph A here. Paragraph A is titled Addendum Controls. And what that means is if any part of this addendum here is in conflict with a provision that's in the purchase contract, this addendum will control, meaning that this addendum supersedes anything that is going to be found in the purchase contract. And remember, this is an addendum to the real estate purchase contract. Paragraph B addresses fees and where they're paid. It says cash fees are specified in this addendum will be paid in whatever county of Texas that you're in. I'm with EXP. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, but we have to put Travis County on there. Talk with your broker if you don't know where to put, what county to put, but that's, I don't know actually what consequence that is, but you got to put something there. Paragraph C talks about listing brokers' fees. Now, this is important. It says seller shall pay listing broker the fees specified in a separate written representation agreement between seller and a listing broker. So there's nothing on this document that's going to say how much the listing broker is getting paid. That is all addressed in the listing agreement. Paragraph D, this is where you come into play as an agent representing a buyer. Or if you're a listing agent and you want to make sure that your brokerage or the sellers are paying the right amount or not paying anything at all, whatever your agreement reads, this is going to be important for you as well. So paragraph D, other brokers' fees. Other brokers' fees will be paid as specified below, and buyer shall pay any remaining amount due to the other broker specified in a separate written representation agreement between other broker and the buyer. So what that means, or what that looks like, if the seller says, hey, I'll pay 2%, but your buyer rep agreement says you're going to be paid 3%, this is saying that your representation agreement will state that the buyer has to make up the difference. So let's talk about paragraph 1. This says check all that apply, right? So you can have both of these boxes checked. There could be a lot of information going on here, being paid from multiple sources, or it can be just one. You need to check all that apply. Box 1, your first option says the listing broker shall pay either a flat fee or a percentage of the sales price as contained in a separate written compensation agreement between listing broker and other broker, such as Form TXR 2402, which is compensation agreement between brokers. So I'm going to put a link up here to another video that explains that. So if you don't know what that form entails, you don't know how to use it, I'm going to have a video for you to make sure that you do figure that out. And remember, that is coming from the listing broker, right? So that's how it used to happen, where we would go in, we would collect a commission as a listing brokerage, and then part of that commission we would pay as the broker to the other agent. Now, EXP is no longer doing that, right? So you're going to be negotiating your buyer agent compensation directly with the seller if you're with EXP. Not all brokerages are doing that yet. I imagine at some point they all will. But if you check box 1, basically you're saying that the listing broker is going to collect compensation, and then from that compensation, they're going to compensate you from that. Now, paragraph 2 says seller shall pay. This is check one box only, right? So box A is either a flat fee or a percentage of the sales price as contained in a separate written compensation agreement between seller and other broker, such as TXR 24-1, which is compensation agreement between broker and owner. And again, there's going to be a link up here, and you can check out an explanation video of that document as well, which you need to know that one for sure. Specified amount, and then in bold it says specified amount is for informational purposes only and does not change compensation specified in the separate written compensation agreement. So what does that mean? That means if you check box 2A here, whatever is here on this document is just for informational purposes. But whatever is in your compensation agreement between broker and owner is what's going to prevail, right? That document is what creates the agreement, or it creates the obligation for the seller to pay you, right, in that document. Now, if you check 2B, again, you could put in a flat fee or a percentage of the sales price. So it says flat fee or percentage of sales price towards other brokers' fees. So use this option only if there is no separate written compensation agreement between seller and other broker. This option creates a new obligation for seller. So if you don't want to use the compensation agreement between broker and owner, all you would need to do is check D2B, and whatever is in there would create the obligation for the seller and the agreement between you as the broker and the seller. So for instance, if you put 3% in here in 2B, then that would be the agreement. If the seller agrees to that and signs that, then they're paying you 3% out of their net proceeds. Or if it's 2% or 1% or whatever it is, this document is going to be governing on how the seller compensates you if you're not using that TXR 2401. Again, there's going to be a link here for you to look at that TXR 2401. And we're going to talk about intermediary, which is super important. But before we do that, don't forget, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get notification when I do post more videos. That's just going to help make sure that you get paid and then you stay educated in your industry. The most educated agents are the ones that make the most amount of money. So stay educated. All right, intermediary broker's fees. So if you don't know what intermediary is, that is when two agents are working on one transaction from the same brokerage. It can also be one agent, right? It could be one agent that's working with the buyer and the seller. That would also be intermediary. I'm not going to go too deep on intermediary other than that. So let's talk about what it means here on this document. So in addition to any fees, seller has agreed to pay listing broker in a separate written representation agreement, meaning your listing agreement. Seller shall also pay listing broker. And the reason why it says listing broker is because that broker is also the buying broker. Either a flat fee or a percentage of the sales price. Amounts specified in this paragraph E shall be applied towards any fees that buyer has agreed to pay listing broker in a separate written representation agreement, which is your buyer representation agreement. Again, don't forget, guys, if you're showing homes, you have to have a buyer representation agreement. So make sure that you have that. It says buyer shall pay any remaining amount due to listing broker specified in a separate written representation agreement, going back to that buyer rep agreement. So if paragraph E here says 2% and your buyer representation agreement says 3%, that last sentence I just read means that your buyer is going to be on the hook for that additional 1%. Then it says in bold, use this option only if listing broker represents seller and buyer as intermediary. This option creates a new obligation for the seller. Exact verbiage that we saw in paragraph D2B, where those options are creating new obligations for the seller to pay compensation. Paragraph F talks about authorization. Seller and buyer authorize escrow agent to pay listing and other broker at closing in accordance with this addendum or other separate written agreements. So now it's going back to your listing agreement, it's going back to your buyer representation agreement, and then this addendum. So whatever's on here are instructions for the title company or escrow company to pay the brokers, right? So you want to make sure that you have this dialed in, and then buyers and sellers are going to print their names. They're going to sign this. You don't need to sign it as the broker, neither on the listing side or the buying side, but this does need to be all signed up. Make it part of your purchase agreements from here on out if you're not doing that, because this is how you're going to get paid. What's in the MLS and what's on page 10 of the residential purchase contract no longer apply because there's no MLS compensation being offered. You have to deal with that here in this addendum. Make sure that on paragraph 22 of your purchase contract that you're including this addendum. Make sure it's listed there so the title company knows to look for it. And then be sure to use those other addendums, right? The compensation agreement between buyer and broker, or compensation agreement between brokers. If you're going to use those, make sure that you include them in here as well. That's it, guys, for this video. Be sure to click somewhere in here for the next video that's going to explain an additional compensation agreement. And feel free to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care. Peace.